And we are watching the White House right now. President Trump is about to meet with Japan's prime minister. This is a critical moment. The president demanding U.S. allies contribute more as we, along with Israel, knock down a nuclear-thirsty enemy in Iran and protect key oil shipping lanes in the Middle East. A new joint statement from Japan and other allies signaling they are ready to help secure the shipping now through the Strait of Hormuz and support efforts to stabilize global energy supplies. Now, that's counter to what some of them have previously said. We will take you to this as soon as it begins at the White House. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. U.S. forces are keeping major pressure on Iran's terror regime. New video now from Central Command shows precision strikes targeting the regime's military network. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Dan Kane with a new update on Operation Epic Fury.
Our objectives, unchanged, on target, and on plan. Destroy missiles, launchers, and Iran's defense industrial base so they cannot rebuild. Destroy their navy, and Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Today will be the largest strike package yet, just like yesterday was. As I've said from day one, our capabilities continue to build, Iran's continue to degrade.
We continue to hunt and kill mine storage facilities and naval ammunition depots. We continue to hunt and kill afloat assets, including more than 120 vessels and 44 mine layers, and the pressure will continue.
Overnight, Iran launched strikes on energy sites in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait. And they went after Israel, and those hits followed Israel striking a gas field that Iran shares with Qatar. President Trump, with this warning to Iran, he says the U.S. will, quote, massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. I do not want to authorize this level of violence and destruction because of the long-term implications that it will have on the future of Iran. But if Qatar's LNG is again attacked, I will not hesitate to do so. Vice Admiral Robert Harward coming up with me in Focus. Let's begin with Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv. And Trey, some activity in the last few hours.
Yeah, Harris, good morning. More ballistic missile fire just targeted Israel a few minutes ago. Sirens were sounding from north to south across this country. And it comes amid a renewed focus on energy in the Middle East and those exchange of strikes yesterday targeting Gulf energy infrastructure. The video you see here is the South Pars gas field in Iran. That's smoke rising from the horizon in the aftermath of Israeli strikes. Immediately, the Iranians responded with an attack on the Ras Laffan facility in Qatar. This is the same gas field just on the other side of the Persian Gulf. And it was significant. It damaged, according to initial reports, 17% of Qatar's export capability and could take up to 5 years to repair. Now, a top official in Qatar from the Ministry of the Interior said in a statement overnight, quote, the civil defense has fully contained 2 out of 3 fires in the Ras Laffan industrial area with no injuries reported. Cooling and securing operations at the sites are ongoing, while the explosives group of the Internal Security Force is carrying out its tasks in handling any hazardous elements. President Trump overnight taking to Truth Social, speaking about those initial Israeli strikes against Iran, saying in part, quote, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. Now, Israeli officials disputed that characterization, but it comes as Israel is taking new incoming ballistic missile fire. You can see here some of the interceptions overnight, those cluster munitions once again raining down on the population below. In the West Bank, 4 Palestinian women were killed by an Iranian ballistic missile. In central Israel, another foreign worker killed. All of this taking place as a top official in the Israeli military spokesperson's unit described the air defense quality today.
We
have air defense systems. I can already say they are among the best in the world. This is proven. Unfortunately, the defense is not airtight. We use our systems to intercept these missiles. These cluster missiles are a war crime if this terrorist regime targets them at population centers. There is no difference from a regular missile except for its dispersion.
Earlier this week, shrapnel from an Iranian ballistic missile landed just feet away from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. A police source telling Fox News overnight that all of the holy sites in Jerusalem will remain closed for the time being. Harris?
Well, and we've already seen, I was watching one of your reports earlier, Trey, some of those sites already have some damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Large pieces of shrapnel raining down on the old city of Jerusalem. And this speaks to what the Iranians are targeting. They're not just going after Israeli military infrastructure. They're targeting civilians. They're targeting worshippers. And overnight, they killed 4 Palestinians. One rocket that was fired overnight from the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah landed in Gaza. Harris?
What you say is so important, too, because in Jerusalem, when you go to pray at the wall, you have a mixture of religions there, including Muslims. I mean, it's amazing that they would strike any part of, old Jerusalem, any of that. Trey Yingst, always great reporting from you. Thank you very much. In focus now, retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward, a former deputy commander at CENTCOM, and he served on George W. Bush's National Security Council and as a U.S. Navy SEAL in Iraq and Afghanistan. And sir, we welcome you to the program. Look, the energy infrastructure that is being hit both by Israel and Iran and that back and forth now, that's something that President Trump doesn't want to do. He wants to leave the country as whole as possible for a healthy economy. Can he avoid the kind of decision that puts us in that part of the hitting?
Well, I hope so, but time will tell, and that's the issue here. We're dealing with time parameters now. How long can this go on and keep evolved? And people have questioned why we went into this war. Look at what's happening now. And this has all occurred at a time when we could challenge Iran. Imagine this scenario when there were not U.S. forces in the region, when we were not able to bring this amount of force against Iran and the patrol at this point, moving Gulf, eradicating these missile threats. But ultimately, this is the end state that has to be achieved, where Iran cannot pursue this destruction throughout the region and to our forces as well.
Vice Admiral, I'm curious. I just read a statement, and they've kind of gone back and forth on this, too. First countries, particularly in NATO and Japan, saying, yeah, we're not going to jump in and help with that effort at all, and because it puts their military involved. Is that why? And what do their militaries really look like if they can't help us in that effort, which really benefits them when it comes to oil?
Well, at the end of the day, it will be political will. And I think that's what will drive it. Their militaries are very capable. They've partnered with us in Afghanistan and other operations around the world. And when we do that, it enhances everyone's capacity and capability. But right now, it's that political will of not wanting to join the conflict. So I think ultimately, as we see this thing play out, and dependent on time, that political will change. Because it will affect their people, will affect their economies, and they'll need.
Just moments from now, European allies, along with Japan, released that joint statement I just spoke of on the Strait of Hormuz. Let's get into it, and I can read part of it now. Quote, we condemn in the strongest terms recent attacks by Iran on commercial vessels in the Gulf, attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations, and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iranian forces. We will take steps to stabilize energy markets, including working with certain producing nations to increase output. We will also work to provide support for the most affected nations, including through the United Nations and international financial institutions. Japan's prime minister said she expects today's meeting to be, quote unquote, very difficult. Yesterday, President Trump posted this: because of the fact that we have had such military success, we no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did. Likewise, Japan, Australia, or South Korea. What is the president boldly saying there that he wants to make very clear?
I think his commitment, and that's probably the most important element of this. He's committed to seeing these through. If the allies are not willing to join, we're going to do it. We're going to move forward. And I think that commitment at the end of the day will be confirmation to these other countries of their political will. And ultimately, as they're effective, I think that will play out. So again, I think the president is committed to seeing this through so that this cannot happen again. And that's the end state that's needed.
Joint Chiefs Chairman, along with the The Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth this morning gave their 8 a.m. Eastern briefing. And one of the things that stood out to me was that Chairman Kane said that, they went in and moved against Iran, and they came back with a lot of weaponry. Why, from what we're seeing, why didn't we know more, or did we know more about what they had?
Well, we've been tracking Iran for decades, and I think the element that surprised everyone is the drone component. We've always tracked the missiles, we've tracked the launchers, we've tracked the mines, but this, as we're seeing the evolution in drone warfare now, as cheap, how mass-produced, how swarming, how many you can launch, that's what's difficult in this case to deal with. And that's what I think we were unaware of, or at least didn't have complete intelligence of the scale of it. And that's hard to do because they're cheap to build, they're affordable. But as we've seen this evolution in drone warfare over the last 3 decades, this is that latest evolution. The scale and the production being cost effective adds a whole new quiver to your inventory. And as we're seeing here in the US, we develop those capabilities, those same technologies, using artificial intelligence comes a real deterrent, if not a military capability. So you're watching that evolution occur before your very eyes. And I think that's the part we didn't have complete intelligence in.
Well, and the other thing, too, is we've seen with those areas around the Strait of Hormuz, if there's anything underground, we can get to those with busting bombs as well. And so if there are ideas to do some of that surreptitiously underground, which sometimes we'll see that with the hiding of uranium and whatnot. If they're doing that drone building, we'll get to that too. Vice Admiral, thank you for your time and expertise always. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.